Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to wrap up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's comes at us from Marcin. Agrypnie, F15.2, from the German post-black metal band led by Thorsten Hirsch, multi-instrumentalist. Song tackles the topic of, well, F15.2 in the most visceral way, musically and lyrically. Hope you will enjoy this. Take care. I did see that it was black metal or post-black metal at the very least, so there's that. I don't know what F15.2 is, nor do I know if I'm pronouncing the band's name correctly. So, that's stuff I'll look into later. Let's dive into the music, see what's going on here. The layered vocals are a nice addition. The choir in the backgrounds gives it a larger-than-life vibe. A little bit of a tempo increase there. Feeling a bit more aggressive. Some of it is the tempo increase, but also the guitar tones are more present. I suppose the bass kicks also help with this level of aggression. This section and many of the guitar parts in the past have primarily focused on bouncing back and forth between two notes.
Bevor die Zeit
Interesting bit of syncopation on those vocals. Ba 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 da da. Kind of jazzing it up a little at the end of each of those sentences. Ooh. Okay. Okay. It's interesting because I think the atmosphere on most of this is heavy. It's a depressive element to a lot of this, but it's also incredibly smooth. Yeah, okay, so that was a hemiola. 3 against 2 polyrhythm. I wonder what the decision was for that passage right there. Brand new chord progression, but they didn't do anything with it. They just allowed it to exist for 8 bars and then went back to this chord progression. Like a momentary shift into something punkier and then pulling back to the metal. Interesting. for a really big ending here. Fade out's not where I was expecting that. Also, another interesting place there. I just want to bring this up real quick because we don't get to talk about this too much with black metal. And maybe it's because we don't listen to enough progressive black metal, but right there at the end, we had the quarter notes being hammered away on the snare. But we also had the bass kicks, which were working with triplets, giving us a bit of a polyrhythmic idea going on there. Quarter notes against triplets aren't super interesting from like a rhythmic perspective. If you're not into music theory, it's not going to be something that I think is going to grab your attention too much. Not like the hemiola that we saw earlier, which was a 3-against-2 polyrhythm, whereas the triplet's a 3-against-1. Although technically it was a 6-against-1 because it was eighth note triplets, but I'm not going to get into that. It's still very cool though to hear polyrhythmic ideas here that aren't based off of twos. Because a lot of black metal, you'll have 16th note bass kicks and maybe like eighth note cymbals and then quarter note snare. And, you know, we're kind of just dividing everything by 2. And so everything consistently lines up together in a very symmetrical pattern. And that's not something we see too often. Actually, I suppose the opposite of that is polyrhythmic devices not based around division or multiplication of 2. Just isn't something I associate with black metal too often. These are proggier ideas that I expect from tech death or, you know, progressive metal or progressive metalcore, or, you know, anything else that has that progressive prefix to it. But yeah, black metal, just don't expect it. And so when we had that polyrhythm 3-against-2 coming up, like, I don't know, if it was like 5 minutes into the track or so, that was really interesting. It took me a second to even figure it out because of the wild timbral differences, because it was the snare versus crash cymbal or something like that. And so it's kind of tough for me to hear that relationship that I would normally hear if it's like toms and snare or bass kick and toms or something. More similar timbres, I'll be able to pick that up faster. So I ended up padding it out on my legs, and I was like, yeah, dude, this is 3-against-2. This is a hemiola. That's pretty cool. So we have polyrhythmic stuff throughout here, and right there at the end, you know, we got this triplet vibe on the kicks, and then we've got the, you know, straightforward accenting on the beats on the snare. Yeah, it's just not something I expect to see in black metal, or I suppose here in black metal. But this isn't typical black metal, is it? At least I don't think it is. The requester had called it post black metal, and that might be accurate. Post is a very big umbrella no matter what genre we're covering, but for whatever genre this gets labeled as, it's still incredibly progressive. Even just sticking onto the bass, I mean the drum idea, we kind of entered into some, actually, no, let's get off the drum idea and just look at rhythm in general. I was talking about the vocals when they were isolated somewhere in the middle of the track, and we had a bunch of quarter notes followed by something a bit more syncopated, 2 eighth notes followed by an accent on the offbeat. And that was pretty cool. Again, you don't really hear a lot of syncopation in black metal. There's usually a consistency of aggression, so you don't really have accented beats too often. And if you do, the accent is on the downbeat. It's very straightforward. It's very no frill. It's very consistent. That consistency to me is what creates the atmosphere of black metal. Almost nothing calls attention to itself. It is just the constant oppression of the 16th notes that are being played. That, I think, is the backbeat to a lot of, not the backbeat, the blueprint to a lot of black metal. No matter what type of black metal or what era of black metal you're looking at, this is pretty much one of the defining characteristics of the genre, is sort of not putting your attention towards anything in particular and allowing the entire song to wash over you at any given moment. Here, though, we have a lot of accents. We have offbeat accents coming from the vocals there. The drums, somewhere like in the 6-minute mark or so, I started playing around with punkier rhythmic devices. This was around the same time that I mentioned the punkier harmonies coming into the chord progression. This section kind of read to me as, what if we played post-hardcore music with black metal production? Like the drums, the guitar tones, these are all black metal coded, but harmonically, rhythmically, we're going to do something a bit punkier. And so we got a bit of syncopation there as well. It's just really bizarre to hear so much syncopation in here, because one of my big issues with black metal, of kind of across the board, is a sort of homogeneity of rhythm where there's just not much contrast going on there at all. And we have very dynamic rhythmic elements to this track. Not as dynamic as, say, punk music, which is consistently dynamic with its syncopation, but still more so than I would expect for the sounds that I was hearing. You know, the song kicks in. I've been told this is black metal. It kicks in. It's very black metal, very atmospheric, but definitely a black metal track. And there ended up being a bit more syncopation on here than I would have ever expected. That's very cool. But there's also the harmonic side of things. While I will say that most of this track explores a sort of depressive atmosphere, coming from the production too, which we'll talk about in a second, but definitely from the harmonic devices, looking at the chords being played, when there is a melody, how the melody interacts with the harmony. Yeah, dude, this is a dreary track. I don't think that there's another, well, there's a small read on how it might be different. I'll get to that in a second though, but the dreariness certainly matches black metal, which is sort of what I expect from the genre. But there's a lot of different ways of approaching this dreariness. It allows the song to feel like it has peaks and valleys. It has ebb and flow that's, I mean, I suppose traditional like third wave black metal has ebb and flow as well, but it's more nuanced. Like, you know, the valley and the peaks are going to be like between an 8.5 and a 9 intensity. There is variance there, but it's, you know, it's minute. This actually had much wider sweeping changes between its peaks and its valleys, the highest points and the lowest points. Every section felt connected. Every section felt like we moved into it mostly connected. There are a couple of rougher transitions in here, mostly focusing around tempo changes, which is another rhythmic dynamic component to this that I completely forgot about. So most of it, though, feels connected. We have nice movement between ideas. The chord progression is in flux, though. One section might have this progression, the next will have this one, the next will have this one. It all captures the same vibe, the same mood. It's this dreary weight pressing down on the listener, but they find multiple ways to explore that, which I find, again, to be a bit outside of my expectations for the genre, which typically sits within 1 to 2 chord progressions and then paints the riffs to be the dynamic component to that. Your verses and choruses might have the same chord progression, but different riffs, and that's where the change is going to be felt. This song wasn't really riff heavy at all. A lot of the guitar work on this is droning, honestly. You know, just you have a chord, you play it 16 times, you move to the next chord, you play it 16 times on these 16th notes, a bit faster as standard for black metal. I think we had some eighth notes in some places, and honestly, I think at one point we had quarter notes just strum on the beat, every beat. And I think each one felt accented, which makes none of them feel accented at all, which is really interesting. The only reason they felt accented at that point is because I had heard the guitarist play in the previous section where that's what the accent was, that type of intensity at the attack. So that's an interesting thing too, where the section itself isn't dynamic, but when you compare it to what comes around it, it has its own dynamic quality to it. There's a lot of nuance to this track. Anyways, the guitars mostly sit in the background and they create the fuzz, they create the atmosphere, they create the harmonic properties. The drums keep the song going. Honestly, I couldn't hear the bass most of the time. I'm going to assume it was hidden in the shadow of the bass kick or the guitars, following along with what they're doing rhythmically or melodically, just filling out the low end that maybe the guitars can't hit. You know, they're just not low enough in range. And it's just kind of getting scooped together into the general chord that I'm hearing. I don't hear a separation between the bass and the guitar in those situations. There were a couple of bass lines that I heard. I know the bass was there. It wasn't incredibly muddy, which I think is a plus. I still think the song could have used a little bit of a bass boost because I want to hear the attack on the bass guitar. I mean, if it's picking, then maybe that's why I don't hear it as much. But if it's finger picking, it's going to have a softness that differentiates itself from electric guitars, and I tend to like to hear that. But I think if you're just listening to this casually, I don't think the song is missing bass. It has a strong enough low end in the track. It's not like it feels empty or thin. I like to hear the bass. I like to hear the sound and say, oh, that's definitely the bass guitar. Just a personal preference. But still, the bass guitar contributes to the atmosphere and harmony in the same way that the guitars do. Not a lot going on there aside from the ever-shifting chord progression throughout this song. So I want to get back to the emotion here. I mentioned dreariness, heaviness, weightiness. I'd even say some sections feel a bit depressive, but the song as a whole, I don't know if I can classify it as that. Oftentimes I will feel a crushing weight, especially when it comes to black metal, especially with depressive atmospheres. I don't really get that here. And I had mentioned earlier, maybe this didn't make any sense to anybody, so I'm going to expand on it. I said that it feels depressive, but smooth. There isn't a lot here that feels antagonistic, even though I understand that the chords being used are supposed to reflect a type of sadness. I think that there is a way to take these chords and make it feel like a crushing weight, really depressive black metal, or use it in like a doom metal setting and really feel the weight of those emotions. But I don't really get that here. In fact, several parts of this, despite hearing the chords and saying, well, in another context, you know, this is definitely a sad sound, feel uplifting. Particularly, I think, in the opening chorus, maybe the part where the choir comes in. We have this really large sound and it's bright, it's vibrant, it feels like it's pulling the entire track up. The chords are still sad, but it feels as if there's some sort of victory within this, some sort of perseverance within this. And I feel like this kind of infected the entire track. Even when the choir wasn't around, I could still find elements that felt positive in the song. I really hope the lyrics lean into this some way, where maybe it is sorrowful or depressive or any other negative emotion, but it's about fighting through that, of improving your mental health or something along those lines. Because no part of this song really felt crushing and undefeatable. It never felt like nihilistic, or what's the other word? Where like you just have no chance of winning or surpassing this plight, and so you give up. I can't think of what that word is. Insurmountable, maybe? I don't think that's what I was thinking of, but yeah, this doesn't feel oppressive. And I think that's a really big deal to me because black metal tends to feel oppressive. And I don't know what more to say about this. I don't know what more to understand about this. I think the lyrics are going to help in that regard. But there are several sections in here where I kind of felt calm. Despite acknowledging the chordal emotions, the way it's presented to me feels calming or maybe even soothing in some way. I guess the big thing here is that I typically associate black metal's overwhelming depression and nihilism with an antagonism, something that is oppressive to me and pushes back against me. I do not find that I enjoy most black metal because of the presentation alongside the chordal information, but this is different. This is not antagonistic. Most sections in here I actually found to be quite beautiful, and that is dulling the emotional resonance, I believe. This may also be completely based around expectations, as I expect black metal to be harsh and abrasive, and when it isn't, well, maybe it's not as powerful emotionally. But that's more of like a reaction to my expectations and how the song subverts them. It's quite possible on a second, third, fifth listen, after I know what I'm in store for, that maybe the emotive element hits me harder. I don't know. But I did find that to be an interesting aspect of this first listen through this. The production on this is really well done. I think it's my favorite part of the track, other than some of the moodier sections that I thought were done really well. Oh yeah, dude, solos. We're gonna have to talk about that too. But the production is incredibly clear. There is a gnarliness to some of the guitar tones. There's a lot of fuzz and buzz going on with the main rhythm guitar in the opening section of the track that kind of creates the drone, the fuzzy wall that persists along most of this song. But for the most part, everything is clearly audible. There's a lot of space between all the instrumentation. I can hear everything going on other than the bass. But guitars, guitar separation, every part of the drums, I'm really happy the drums aren't produced lo-fi or even mid-fi, just incredibly muddy. There's a lot of dynamic qualities to the drum kit. In fact, all of the different cymbals, I can tell the difference between. I do think that sometimes some of the cymbals are a bit too loud and too quiet. There's a ride cymbal that shows up to the left often that I feel could have been bumped up just a little bit. And there is that China, I think it was, that was just very prominent in the mix about 3 minutes in, off to the right. I think we only heard it twice, but it just cuts through everything. So maybe a little bit of balance going on, but the thing is I can hear them all. It's not just this cluttered mess of rumbleness that we've heard in other black metal tracks. And as I've mentioned in the past, I just really enjoy and appreciate clarity in production. Even the vocals, which I don't know what he's saying, is incredibly clear. And I love that moment when we got, I think it was just the vocals, or maybe there was something quiet going on alongside it. I could hear it. I could make out, individual textures of the natural compression that they were creating with their harsh vocal technique. And I could hear enunciation and specific syllables. And it was just a really cool moment for me. I love times like that when I get to kind of hear some of the extra textures and details to the vocals. So often, harsh vocals get lost in the mix of metal tracks, and you get to, well, you don't get to, you lose some of the nuanced elements of the sound itself. And I think that's one of the things I really love about pop production is, being able to hear all the slight changes between all sorts of different vocalists and how they all approach singing in their own techniques and textures and colorings and timbres and all the little details, because the vocals are lifted so high up above the music. It's not always my favorite type of production, but for, being able to key into a specific instrument, absolutely wonderful. And I kind of wish we would see more of that pride in metal vocalists. You put so much time and effort into mastering your technique, and then you cover up the details so that you only get the size and the width of it. I think that's one of the things why I'm not too big of a fan of listening to like vocal one takes of pop music, but I love vocal one takes of metal music, because usually the vocals are a bit elevated because you're there for the vocalist, you want to hear them, and you get to hear more of the details of the vocals. Because otherwise I would just listen to the studio recording of the song. But for metal vocalists, you actually get to hear more of what they're doing. And the technique is so cool. There's so many cool textures and colors and timbres to all, everybody has their own style of harsh vocal too. And it all kind of blends together into the harsh vocal for me, because so often the nuanced elements that separate you from every other vocalist gets lost in the mix, as a lot of metal just kind of de-emphasizes the vocals. So anyways, that was a bit of a ramble. Coming back to Agrypnie, I really like how the vocalist gets to shine in the mix. We had the acoustic guitar duet though, and this was absolutely gorgeous. Again, there's so many parts of this track that are just soothing in a way I wouldn't expect for a black metal track that seems to focus on so much sadness. But they're really not going for a gritty type of depression. They're trying to find some sort of beauty in here, whether that is hope or patience or the ability to overcome any of this. I don't know what they're aiming for, but so much of this feels surmountable. It feels understandable. It feels digestible in a way that sad black metal doesn't always. And I love this moment where the energy comes down and we build out this beautiful atmosphere. We kind of tone down the fuzz on the electric guitars too. And then this acoustic guitar comes in with a couple of notes, like 3 or 4, and then 3 or 4 more. Then this evolves into a full melody using this one ostinato as a jumping off point into linear writing. And then another guitar comes in and they're just like dancing around each other, harmonizing. It was a gorgeous moment. Absolutely love that. As if most of this track's focus on this depression was finally met with finding an equal and finding joy through dancing with each other, whatever that would represent literally. Here we have the metaphor of two people finding joy within each other. And it's just such a good moment. Absolutely lovely. All right. I'm going to hit some lyrics on this. I'm going to look up the name of the band, see if that's a word. We're going to look up what F15.2 is. We got a lot of discussion, I think, ahead of us, just based off of all these little things that I have no knowledge about. All right. Agrypnie is Greek for agrypnia, which is what we call it in English. It's the medical definition of sleep deprivation. I don't think that has much to do with this track, but that is definitely a black metal band name right there. Now, looking up F15.2, I got a lot of stuff that probably wasn't right. There's an F15 Mark II combat jet. There's an F15 lavalier mic. It's actually an F15.2 wireless lavalier mic, kind of like something I use here. It took me a while until I landed on a medical code. And the medical code is basically for substance abuse, specifically stimulant dependence, and how it affects the mental capacities for somebody as they become addicted to a stimulant. This is mental and behavioral disorders due to other stimulants. There we go. That's the definition. I think that's what we're dealing with here. We're looking at a metaphor of a storm coming in. The verses focus on this: storms that bring voices, the sun sinks on the horizon, fire illuminates the shadows, lightning that shatters the sky, thunder that makes your body tremble, and fog that awakens the beast. Talks about floods, shallowing paths, that there's nowhere left for shelter, it's just desolate land, and that the spray of the rain cuts through your pale face. It says, what once was now lies in ruin, and your morning leans towards ruin before time erases your existence. So we have this concept of a great storm that comes in slowly across the land. There's so many signifiers of it: the sun going down, clouds coming out, fog rising. Eventually, though, the rain floods everything, destroying everything, leaving you just in a desolate place. We get to the chorus. It says, "Wherever you go, whatever you do, your thoughts and actions are driven by the inner tides, and your powerless spirit dissolves in the pull of alluring temptation." That your world becomes shattered and controlled by external forces, leaving you to make choices that go against your benefit. They go against healthy decision making, all because of the allure of temptation, because of addiction. That if you don't, get this stimulant, get this drug, whatever it is, your body goes into withdrawal and everything starts to collapse. Every being, every fiber of your being demands this substance to be in your body. Your entire world falls apart until you can get this. And there's so many decisions that you'll make in order to get that substance and use it. It's a very interesting way of describing that. I've been trying to piece together how the song might work within that. I had felt depression in this song, but maybe it's just general gloom. Maybe that's why it wasn't quite as impactful for me. Not because of the smoothness of the production or how palatable a lot of this ended up being for me, but maybe because it's just a general haze. Not a full-on depression that wrecks your life, but an inability to appreciate life while you're in these lows, when you're not high. It's interesting because we did another track about substance abuse and addiction earlier this week. Maybe it was last week. It's been recent, but I can't remember which one it is. I'll put it up there. Editor Bryan will take care of that. And I had mentioned that the metaphor that I've always kind of known is that the world becomes colorless until you're on the drug, and then you get your color back. And so basically your average state of existence, which was colorful at a time, now dwindles, and you get to a point where you have to be on the drug just to reach where you were before. You'll never kind of reach those highs. And maybe that's what the gloominess of this track is. That these moments are just that. And maybe when the two guitars came in, and I mentioned this was a beautiful moment, maybe this is a description of our hypothetical narrator here. Actually, I guess the narrator is describing a third party. But when the person ends up getting the substance and the color comes back in and the beauty comes back into the song, it would be that momentary joy that they get from having, being high. And then that dwindles and diminishes again into the normal state of what we can call a low now, even though it was a norm before. Yeah, I think that all comes together rather well. And reading the lyrics helped me appreciate a little bit more of the music and understand what it was trying to do. All right, those are my thoughts then on Agrypnie's F15.2. Let me know what you thought of this, if there's anything that stood out to you, anything that you'd like to add on to what I said or correct me on. Let me know if you have your own take, perspective, or opinion on this. Put all of that and anything else you'd like to add into the comment section below. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.